Hello, everybody. So I think this is the last automated building session, and I've seen a lot of you in a lot of these sessions, and I hope you guys got as much out of it as I did. It's been a fun couple of days here with these sessions. So with that, this is the closing session, and this really is kind of a accumulation of a lot of the things that at least I talked about over the last couple of days. So for those of you who weren't in some of our earlier meetings, I just want to kind of bring you up to date on some of the topics and some of the things that we talked about. So first and foremost, in the BAS industry, we talked a lot about it becoming an IP-based industry. Most of the discussions, there was discussion about how all the controls now that are new, that are available, are IP-based, and how people are starting to apply an OT network to connect these systems. And integrators are becoming more common, where they tie in multiple systems together to bring new solutions to owners that we haven't seen before. And we've presented that for the last couple of days, and I've had a lot of people come up to me after and talk to me about it. And it's fascinating to me how many different levels we're at in terms of the industry. There's a lot of people who are kind of like way in it, but I would say the majority are still not in it, if you may, in terms of understanding that this is an IP-centric universe we're in now. Integration has become a typical in our jobs, and we need to start providing a better occupant experience to compete in the modern economy, right? And I'm really surprised at some of the vendors that I talked to here. I was surprised to learn that some of them have decided they're not going to build IP controls. I was like, really? Like, you don't, like, it's not on your radar? They're like, no, we looked at it. We spent a lot of time looking at it, and we decided that 485 is going to be around a little while. I'm going to call them like they're like the Bell, right? They're the telephone company. I'm like, okay, telephone company, good luck with that. So anyways, the reality is there are some companies out there that have evolved and have adopted the new technology. They've integrated all sorts of systems together. They've moved away from the lifestyle of just saying, I'm a Siemens guy, I'm a Honeywell guy. They now sell their own companies as a solution. The controls they put in are usually their choice. And they have a total different outlook on the industry than those people saying, I think it's going to stay 485. And I'm hoping as we discuss some topics today with my fine panel that you folks will agree that yeah, it's time, that there's success to be had with this technology. We're going to show you some really good examples today of that. And I'm hoping that you'll be enthused to go out back to your markets and start pushing this new IP-centric concept. So with that, I apologize. My speaker in the lower left-hand corner, he fell asleep. He is not with us. There's about 7 integrators in the room. Anybody want to come up and take his place? Raise your hand. I know who you are. No? No? All right. I won't single you out then. No? No? Okay. I point. No? Okay. All right, fine. So we'll just stick with our 2 and myself then. But I do ask you, especially, I know there's a lot of integrators in the room, feel free to pipe in, right? Especially when we start talking about successes and stuff. So the last meeting, the one thing that group consensus came away with, and the last meeting was really kind of like these thought leaders in the industry, like the president of Distech and Sky Foundry and LinkSpring, and kind of getting all together. The one thing they all agreed upon is we as an industry, we don't share our success stories enough. We don't brag about what we're doing as an industry enough. And so that's kind of what I want to bring that out today. I want you all to feel free to brag about these cool jobs you did and what you delivered, because that's how we're all going to learn, and that's how we're all going to advance the industry, is by learning from each other. So, Okay, so I'm going to introduce each of my panelists first, and then I'm going to ask them to come up, and they're going to just kind of give you a little bit of view about their background and where they see things. So I got my first panelist. To my left is Scott Cochrane from Leung Building Technologies, based out of Denver. They're one of the largest independent controls companies I've heard of in terms of the scale at which they work. They've been using Niagara Tritium as long as I have, which is like, we're going back to like 99 type stuff. And they have accomplished a lot in the West in terms of being an MSI, systems integration, and really they use equipment and they package it with integration, and it's a fascinating story. So Scott's going to talk, and then Brian Oswald. Brian comes to us from CBRE ESI. They are a Milwaukee-based company. They are they're a part of CBRE, but they're almost like CBRE's internal integrator. CBRE bought an integrator 4 years ago? 4 years ago, they were acquired to be an integration platform for CBRE, for their clients. And Brian's got some neat stories to talk about as well. So I guess your slides first, Brian. So you want to come up? All right, Brian Oswald.
Thank you, everybody. As Scott said, we are an integrator. We started off as an integrator. We were acquired by a property management firm. And the reason for that acquisition was really to drive their data-driven FM strategy. As we know, the world of FM is changing, and figuring out ways to extract data, utilize that data to simplify the workflow, simplify the overall process, and provide a better, more efficient way to deliver results for our clients. That's really what we're focused on doing. We've been around for almost 30 years. We started doing system integration work right around the time Niagara came to market. I'm technically second generation, so the business was originally owned by my dad, who was actually employee number 9 at Tritium, so there's a long heritage there. And it's been good. It's been exciting. It's a challenge. It's a challenge when you're trying to support multiple providers, vendors, technology. But more recently, the challenge becomes how you take that same approach and you drive it into the IT space. Utilizing MQTT, secure protocols, getting ISO 27001 certified. These are all things that have changed our business in the last 5 to 10 years that we would have never thought of. And it really is, it goes to the heart of what an integrator is today, which is a very flexible, very nimble type organization that can adjust as the market change, as the products change, as the support services change. It doesn't mean we get it right every time, and there are things that we're going to struggle with, but we're pretty resilient, and we can overcome those challenges and figure out new ways to attack that problem. The other thing, and more recently, the industry itself has changed to be more of an experientially driven approach. What do I mean by that? Things like wayfinding, workplace experiences, concierge services. So it's no longer just putting forth applications to support your mechanical equipment. It's taking that same data and bringing it into a mobile app interface so that I can now have this holistic view of my room, of my client, for my client, so they can do everything from reduce the temperature to schedule a Starbucks coffee for delivery. So it's a pretty exciting time. We're excited about the road ahead and some of the latest technologies that's on the floor this year, and we'll see where it takes us into the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Brian.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me. Scott Cochrane with Leung Building Technologies based in Denver, Colorado. We cover a 7-state region in the Northwest from there. And really, we're a 50-year-old company. We began in 1965 and started out as an equipment rep, and then acquired a small temperature controls contractor in the 90s. And then I believe we were the number 2. We have the number 2 contract with Tritium, based on a visionary leader that we had who just recently retired named Mark Ballant. Some of you in the room may know him. And he saw the promise of open protocols and brought it to our company. And so we've evolved over the last several decades in temperature controls from a traditional, going from pneumatic to DDC temperature controls, to now we're a master systems integrator is what we call ourselves. And what is that? I think that's part of the definition, and I know there's been a lot of discussion around that. And to me, what a master systems integrator is someone who, a contractor who not only is able to handle the typical mechanical equipment, but as Brian was referring to begin integrating some of these other disparate systems that are part of the heartbeat and of a building. What makes a building work? We're bidding jobs every single day. We're a real plan and spec heavy company, and we are bidding jobs every day now, which is surprising, that are coming from developers, sophisticated clients that are having us put in structured cabling, OT networks, fiber networks, switches, designated ports for parking revenue systems, for security systems, for lighting integrations, for the total occupant experience. And that's where we're seeing the industry going. I mean, long gone are the days where I can take a typical HVAC mechanic and pull out a laptop and show them, here's how a VAV gets programmed. I need to hire computer science IT people in order to fulfill my scope of work. So.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, very good. Ian Morris. Ian. So anyways, all right. So, all right, this is a panel discussion. So we're gonna kind of jump into some topics. I'm gonna ask my panelists. Unfortunately, for Eric's recording this, so if you guys don't mind, we're gonna have to kind of stand up here and talk today because so Eric can get a good recording of us. So, okay, so obviously the term, you know, so this session was called the Extinction of the Temperature Control Contractor. And I have gotten into some very lively debates with different people about that topic. Obviously, you know, and here I'll just kind of throw my philosophy at you guys and then we can discuss it. So my thinking is this: the mechanical contractor will be around to do comfort, yeah, as long as I can see in the future. But the scope of work of the temperature control, when the mechanical can provide plug and play, easy to set up and install equipment with controls, and integrators can come in and plug them in together with other systems, lighting and other things, and bring much more benefit to the owner. My first question to you guys: where is temperature control, the contractor? Where are the temperature control contractors going to land? Where are the branches? Where's the Johnson branch going to land in all this? You know what I mean? And what do you guys think? Scott, you want to go first?
Sure. I don't see any, I don't know any manufacturers that may be in the room. Are there any manufacturers in the room?
Spies in there?
Any spies? All right. Well, here's something you guys probably aren't going to like to hear me say, and the products that we rep, they don't like me saying this either, but it's true. So I would say over the last 5 years, as our revenue has grown, we've nearly doubled in size. I'm buying the same amount of product that I did 5 years ago. I'm buying less stuff than I did while my revenue is nearly doubled. And why is that? I think our industry is fundamentally changing. Right? 5 years ago, I could hardly buy a heat pump that had a backnet controller on it. Now I can't buy one without one. And so even custom air handler manufacturers are shipping equipment that is fully deviced out. So fundamentally, our scope of work has to change and has changed. We are becoming software integrators. We're not becoming sensor installers anymore. So that's a little editorial comment.
So, I mean, real quick, Scott, just
Yep.
to embellish on that a little more. So,
Sure.
So really, I mean, from your standpoint, obviously you guys still pick up the TC work, but you also
Correct.
sell equipment.
Yes.
Your company does.
Correct.
So have you now seen jobs where there was no scope for with your MSI capabilities and your equipment capabilities? Would you say that there are projects now that would go without a temperature control scope of work, or is it
There
still?
are. There are. So right now, we see, we rep a couple manufacturers that have full turnkey base building automation systems that a simple mechanical contractor can install. And these are rooftop VAV systems, right? I mean, these technologies have been around for quite some time. And we also see VRV coming into the marketplace as well. And so plenty of times, an owner can have a full BAS with maybe a limited interface, maybe not as swanky as some of the fancy graphics that I can do, but it gets the job done in a facility where there may not be a full-time engineer, but they have the functionality that they need. And we sell jobs every day that we train the contractors how to wire them up, and we go start them up. We don't program them.
And how much work is VRF taken away from the temperature control industry? I mean, that's,
Right.
speak to that a little bit, how VRF and how it's invaded the market and how it's changed controls in terms of how you guys go after stuff?
Well, VRF as a technology, I'm sure you're all very aware, is had an impact in our space, particularly, again, because the manufacturers that we deal with, particularly in our market, all have very proprietary systems that run their product from each at the room level, the zone level, all the way to the operator interface. And we have seen just in the last, I'm trying to think, 3 years, we've quadrupled our VRV sales, and it has had an impact on our fan coil and traditional sheet metal product VAV sales. We are an equipment rep. We're the Daikin, Leung is the Daikin rep in Colorado, and so very familiar with the impacts on the equipment side of the business. So revenue that used to sit on my P&L over here is kind of being shifted, if you will, over to the equipment side of the business.
Yeah, and the VRF or what did you say?
Yeah, VRV.
VRV?
Yeah,
Those systems take a huge temperature control chunk out of the job because
correct.
most proprietary, they just don't, the manufacturer provides the entire system, top to bottom.
The manufacturer does everything with the exception of the wiring in the field. Yep.
So you start chopping away at that scope of work for your TC stuff.
There is no scope. It's an equipment sale. It's a completely equipment
There's no
sale.
temperature control.
There's no, right. At best, there might be some miscellaneous cats and dogs, as we call them, some ancillary equipment that isn't automatically provided as part of that system that needs to be integrated. We might provide an assist at best. But again, this isn't the role of the traditional temperature controls contractor, right? The temperature controls are there, the integrations are ready. If it's a backnet system, whether it's MSTP or IP, plug it in, points come up, you select which points you want on the manufacturer's front end, and away you go, and you're off the job. It's fascinating.
And your ability to integrate it means it's no problem. You can still provide what you wanted to provide to the owner and allow all that equipment to come with the controls.
Correct. Correct.
Because now you can integrate it, so it's not as big a deal.
It's not.
You still got the service
VAVs.
contract, you still got the main, it's just you didn't make your temperature control manufacturer very happy because you didn't buy all the equipment from them,
That's right.
And that's one of your biggest challenges. I've heard you and I have talked. Again, we don't have too many vendors in the room, so we'll air a little dirty laundry. But we all in the BAS business are struggling to continue to grow their content in terms of like their traditional controls. And not to knock on, because they're all doing the same darn thing, but they all keep building us the same stuff. I mean, really, guys, right? I mean, come on, man. The world's changing. Like, maybe one of you should build something different. Anyway. Cool. So, okay, Brian, let's shift it over to you.
Yeah, similar to Scott, our revenue has gone up, our IO controller sales have stayed flat, but for different reasons. We don't play in the plan and spec market, we're more in the retrofit market, design build. And why is it different? Well, what we're seeing in our world is more of a split specification model. So we'll be brought in as a Division 25 systems integrator, while the Division 23s will be bid out to your traditional providers, JCI, Siemens, Honeywell, you name it. So for us, it's been a shift just because of the type of work we do. We are seeing more of the integrated equipment. We do, but it's, in retrofit applications, you're typically replacing an old pneumatic VAV or a VAV that was put in the early 90s with a newer DDC-style controller, IP-based controller. So you're still seeing that traditional temperature controls contractor. It's just in a different way. So
Brian, some of the large-scale projects you're working on, you know, where you're owner direct and you're doing these huge scale projects like the warehousing projects you're working on, like, do those projects, I mean, do they put a TC scope on that, or is it just equipment integration?
no, there is a TC scope for some of the ancillary stuff, and you need one for, in that particular case, e-commerce warehousing, there's unique sensing equipment that has to go in for regulatory requirements, so a TC scope would be built for that. But still today, I mean, I was walking with my client this morning, we were down looking at some air handling units, and, you know, they're looking at fully embedded controlled units. They're not looking at putting I/O on devices anymore. They're looking at buying them prepackaged, and they should. It's more efficient for us. We still maintain the integration services, and they get the data that they want out of the unit. So it is a win-win for everyone involved for that particular example.
Cool. So, any other feedback on that? Anybody want to? Yes.
Just a quick one, engineering-wise, you've seen engineers do the Division 25 successfully?
We have, yeah. Newcomb and Boyd's been doing that more and more. AEI out of Madison's been doing that. It's still not fully adopted, but it's becoming more common. Where possible, we try to drive that spec, especially if we have that relationship with the owner, because we believe it provides the best procurement engine that they could have. They can single source the smaller piece, which is the Division 25, to maintain consistency and scalability, while going to market on the more expensive piece, which is the controls, install, and the pieces of equipment that go with it. So procurement is more open to that idea just because the sheer numbers are different, and they can work with that versus seeing $1 million control job go sole source to one provider. So.
That's sort of related to the plant specs side. So Scott, hey, how are you making MSI work in a plant spec environment? I see how it would work on negotiated, but
Yeah, it has to be owner-driven is what we've seen. We've attempted to work with lots of consulting engineers in our market, and because of our equipment rep business, we've got really solid relationships with all the consulting community. And we're still having a difficult time driving a consistent Division 25 specification if the owner isn't driving it and has that, understands the value proposition that, you know, Brian so eloquently stated there. We can't, that's pushing it uphill. We're having a hard time even trying to get, one of the product lines we rep has a very strong lighting integration component to it, and we're having a hard time even getting the lighting integration package to be sold simultaneously with a traditional BAS package, because the buyout model is, you know, different divisions, and so how do you get the two to work together?
are you getting sole sources Division 25 and then the rest of it's kind of feeding into that?
Yes, if it's owner driven. But even then, there's a great deal of resistance because Leung's a little unique in this realm. Is like, okay, how much is Leung going to have on the job? Are you going to have the controls, the Division 25 master system integration? You're going to have security. We do, you know, access control. Oh, and you're going to sell me my chillers and my, wait a second, that's too much. Yeah, they don't like it.
In the back?
Yeah, and unfortunately, you see it in a lot of areas like in your area and DC, California, so there's a lot more money in the projects, you're gonna have a really good Division 25. If you're down here in the Wild West, in Southwest Florida and stuff, you're gonna have something on a plumbing drawing, something on an electric drawing, something on a mechanical drawing. There's a Division 25, they intend for some kind of integration. But that's the problem, you get so many engineers who don't coordinate that across all the, because you have a separate electrical engineer, separate mechanical.
They do, and I would say a lot of that has to do with where the engineer is engaged in the project. And what I mean by that is, in a typical construction design process, the first aspect is get core and shell designed, get the initial layout done, and then somewhere along the line, the client goes, you know, I really like to be able to schedule my rooms, or I'd really be able to like to dim my lights. Well, now you're 80%, 90% through the design phase, and you're trying to shove in some integration services, thus the quality of the documentation becomes very weak. Usually the better opportunities are when the design consultants are engaged early on. They're laying a path or a process for how they're going to deploy a smart building technology program. And then they are doing that in conjunction with their GC, their property manager, their program manager, and their IT staff, to be honest with you. Because a lot of those all of those go hand in hand today. If you miss one of those groups, there's going to be a struggle along the way.
Approach it from the building management category, so that everyone who has a stake in it can sit together and look at the building management system as being the plug-in to.
And we're seeing that more and more. Again, a lot of that depends on where that starting point is. You know, for us, specifically CBRE, if they go into a client and it's a takeover opportunity, which what I mean by that is, let's say the building today is run by JLL, it's going to move over to CBRE. They have typically a 90-day transition period. You have 90 days to learn everything you can possibly learn about that building before you even decide to touch anything. And then under that contract, they won it by being less than the previous provider. So that doesn't leave a whole lot of room for innovation. And this is not a CB problem. This is an industry problem. So you still see a lot of the capital and OpEx expense not going towards the deferred maintenance. It's going to just make the building run and keep it running because the FM contracts have gotten so lean. And that's what needs to change, because to get to your driven model, or the one you suggested, where the FM's more involved, the client's got to be open to spending more money just to upgrade these systems and get them onto a more unified platform, so it's not as Wild West as it is today.
HVAC background, given the temperature controls and how, you know, more IP driven, what would you recommend that person spend their time developing a skill set towards?
Scott and I were just talking. He hired 13 last year. I hired 29. And the bulk of the people we hired are software engineers. They're not HVAC people. And so I would tell you, the more IT-centric, software-centric folks or training that you can get, the better. Because most of the conversations are going to go down that path at some time, and usually it's sooner than later in these discussions with clients.
Well, you preempted one of my questions, so if you don't mind, I'm going to dovetail on what you asked. I'll come back in on that too. Please, so,
Everyone's like,
hold on, Brian, I want to ask Brian a quick question in terms of that, because it was part of my design. So I got to ask, and I want you guys both to answer this. So be honest, where are you getting these people? You guys both have incredible staffs. I mean, tell us, where are you going? I mean, not literally, but like, where are you going to recruit them? How are you recruiting them? Tell us about, you know, their profiles. Like, what are these people, you know, what are their age ranges? What are their back, you know, give me more than that. Come on.
Yeah. So for us, we're based in Milwaukee, so there's a Milwaukee School of Engineering. We have Northern Michigan University, Michigan Tech, Ferris State. These are all great programs that have either HVAC, mechanical, electrical, or software engineering. So that's typically where we're sourcing the resources from.
What is software engineering? I'm sorry, is that out of the engineering curriculums of these schools, or is this out of the computer science curriculum?
It's kind of a combination of both. So they get a little bit of application development. They're more fluid. They're more aware of different programming languages that are used, but it's engineering centric. So it's sometimes it's the people at MSOE. It's the people who make the devices for like the iPhone. It's the software engineers who build like the iPhone devices. They start in our application engineering team. So our entry level technician, for the other word. We don't turn wrenches, but to simplify the terminology, they're our entry level engineers. So.
Brian, are you guys going to the universities? Because I know Ferris State
Right.
traditionally
We actually, for Ferris, we do. We have a former grad who sits on the advisory board. For MSOE, because it's in our backyard, we do a lot with the recruiting and getting involved with their recruiting team and their advisory team to help align the right resources and kind of, you know, we tell them what we need and then they can help us align their curriculum to the resources they have available. So that's worked out well for us.
Yep. So Leung, we have a little bit of a different focus, and we're less Division 25 MSI heavy, and so we tend to lean more towards a traditional BAS contractor, despite the fact that we see, you know, we're buying less and less stuff as we're transitioning into doing more and more software. And so the folks that where we go to hire is we've been, you know, promoting installers and the traditional paths from within, and that's been a really slow road to hoe. The joke in our business is that you know, getting a technician up to speed is like growing an oak tree, not a tomato plant, and it takes a long time. You're looking for a very, very specialized set of skills across a myriad of different technologies, and people need to have the ability to work on a job site and do all these other things. Well, who are these kind of people that I'm describing? High potential people. They don't stay in those roles, right? And then they promote up into project management, or so it's difficult. So we've recruited from the military. We've done quite a bit of work with the veterans organizations, and particularly found a great deal of success with Navy nukes in particular. We probably had a good quarter of our staff is former Navy nukes. I'm a former Navy nuke. It's just our industry is rife with them. We seem to have really good luck with them because the training that they get there while they're in the military is fantastic. We've done recruiting as well at the local universities to get engineers, everything else on board. And again, because what we are doing still looks like hard hats and boots and safety vests, a lot of the engineers that we get in the field out of school, they're not so enamored. This isn't kind of what they envisioned or what they signed up for, despite the level of expertise required. So we bring these folks in, and what we start them with is we start them, you know, doing the typical point-to-point checkout, and we've got a breadboard that, you know, we train them on here's how you use a meter, and here's how you know a valve is wired backwards, and really basic fundamental stuff. And then we get them to where they're billable on jobs, and then we start training them on the software and how to do the commissioning, and then ramp them up. But that it is a 18-month process at a minimum to where we feel like we can get a technician spun up. We've also tried recruiting from Penn Tech. I know has a program at the University of Pennsylvania, and it is a building automation specific program. It is a 4-year degree in building automation. They have required internships and everything else, and we've had some decent luck with them. We've used some of their interns over the summers, and that's been a good experience. Mixed.
How do you assess these new candidates? Scott, could you speak to that first?
So again, how do you screen these? Thank you. So how do you screen these candidates as they're coming in, not only for their drive and their aptitude in interviewing, and we have created, internally, we've created an assessment for not only our own technicians, but also so we can level set the technicians and find where deficiencies lie in whatever part of the discipline the deficiency is, whether it's HVAC system knowledge or networking or even writing skills. I mean, those kinds of things are really important because we're communicating with customers on a daily basis. And so we've created an assessment that we can email to potential candidates, and they take that and it's scored. So it's similar to like a Wonderlic, if anyone's ever taken the Wonderlic, except it's a little bit even more control-centric.
And wait, real quick.
Yeah.
I remember when you
Told me the story the first time. So can you speak to some of the results that surprised you when you had the people who had been in the industry for a while take the assessment test? Can you just speak to that?
Well, I didn't do so well. The technology's changed a lot. You know, I was a tech. You know, I grew up as a system rep for Johnson Controls. And the technology with networking and MQTT and all this others, I don't even know what that stands for. And it's very interesting. It's this constant reinvigoration of the knowledge that has to be poured into the technicians. It's by far our most scarce resource. I tell my team on a daily basis, you know, we're really super blessed to have a great team. And I've told them, is like, if you guys could give me another $5 million of capacity, I could fill it like that. It's the most scarce resource. Whoever has the techs wins. Yes?
How has retention been? These are kind of non-traditional hires, so has it been more challenging or?
So of the 14 we hired last year and ramped up for our summer construction rush and everything else, we still retained 10. And it's really, we consider that a huge success because a lot of them self-selected out. We didn't have to really let anyone go. Yeah, good. They were all early 20s. They were all millennials and Gen Z.
Ryan, could you speak to the, again?
Yeah, you know, we're big on an internship program. So a lot of the people that we hire come from an internship program. The process we use is they'll go through a DISC assessment. We kind of want to know what their personality type's like, how they're going to work with others. But then we also bring them in and they spend an entire day with the team that they're going to work with. When I took over, I had a very strong opinion on this because I'm not the one working with these people every day. I'm not the one to tell you we're going to hire this person. The team has got to believe that that's the right fit for the group because they're coming in with no experience. So for us, we've been able to maintain a high retention, but the flip side of that is we got a pretty cool attraction rate too. And what's happening is the business culture is one that these people are embracing, and they're extending job opportunities to their friends. And their friends are just as qualified, just as good as they are. I mean, even within our office, you know, it was started kind of as a family business. I'm the only one left of that family, but now I've hired everybody else's family. I got 2 brothers, I got a husband, wife, and a son. I mean, and it's great because that's the greatest compliment you could get, right? If it's good enough for them, it's good enough for the rest of their family. And they're all hardworking people. So I think culture has to be an aspect of how you look at employee attraction and retention. And if you got the right culture, it makes that process a lot easier.
Yeah, in the back, question?
Yeah, you talked a little bit about the future direction of equipment sales and control sales. Can you talk a little bit for your organizations or what you would envision in terms of the future for the service organizations?
Well, I'm just about, again, that was one of my questions.
Thanks.
He's going to keep stealing all the good questions and say they were his ideas.
So I'm going to just kind of re-ask the same question with a little bit more to it, though. So as a systems integrator, you guys are standing up very unique services for your customers. And you've created revenue models around those services. Could you guys, without giving away your magic secrets, give us as much as you will so we can learn from what you guys have succeeded with?
Yeah, I mean, for us, because services has been a unique animal because it's incredibly important for our enterprise clients to extract as much value as possible. So how do we deploy services? Well, it's analytic engines, it's remote monitoring, whether that's building automation alarms or faults that are coming out of the building, generating CMMS work orders based on those faults, closing that loop so that we can then compare what's been identified to what's been fixed, do CapEx, OpEx planning. It's a very complex service sell. Yeah, go ahead.
You sell that as a hosted service.
We do. So now that elevates it to another level because certain applications, you cannot extract data from that cloud environment. If you're working with financial institutions, for instance, everything's behind their firewall. Where we could do a retail chain and they could care less if it's in the cloud as long as it's secure. So the deployment of those services become unique as well.
Now, you have one of the best
Subscription models I've ever seen in this industry. Tell me, how important is it to your overall business now after it's been, fully developed the way you guys have? And maybe as a percentage of total revenue, or like where does it land in terms of importance now? Is it everything it was cracked up to be when you guys invented it?
No. I would tell you the growth hasn't been. And a part of that is because as an industry, there's wants and needs in every industry that you work in. Right now, analytics and remote monitoring and services, I'd classify as still a nice to have and not a need to have. Even though the market or the service that the client's getting, it really needs to be a need to have, okay? And that, for that reason, our services growth has been slow. Project work still dominates the bulk of our revenue, hands down, because people are just trying to get rid of their pneumatic crap. I mean, you can't really do a whole lot with analytics when you're running 30-year-old stuff, right? There's not a lot of value to that. I can tell you need to fix stuff until you're blue in the face, but you obviously haven't spent any capital to this point, so what are we really talking about? I'd rather they take that $1 million and upgrade their equipment. And we've had that conversation with clients. Because in the long run, that's going to provide greater value for them. And it's tough because it's service revenue lost, but it's a better overall engagement and partnership.
Deferred maintenance. I remember that. That was a speech you did for us. That's right. Scott, could you speak to it?
Yeah, so we have both traditional mechanical service as well as control service group. And on the mechanical side of the business, it's more traditional as far as, belts, filters, compressors, break fix type work, scheduled maintenance, preventative maintenance. And then on the control side, Brian said it really well. On the analytics, we're promoting it as a value add, and we certainly understand the value, and yet the cost to deploy those solutions is still a high enough hurdle that I agree that often with our clients, their money is, I believe, better spent doing infrastructure, deferred maintenance projects. And then one of the things that we've begun exploring and have begun marketing as well is this idea of overlays of more modern technology, because the technology's become simpler to deploy for visualization, data capture, remote access into sites as a service, software as a service. So cloud monitoring, cloud solutions that can be overlaid on just about over anyone's BAS without the customer having to spend a boatload of money to upgrade the existing infrastructure to try to get that modern functionality, and then we can deploy that as a service.
So you're deploying their interface as a service?
Yes.
Yes.
Got it.
Correct.
And is it hosted, or is it on-prem, off-prem? or how does
Off-prem.
that-
Yep.
Okay. Interesting. And then that gets dovetailed into like a bigger service?
Correct.
Correct.
It's a
contract.
recurring service agreement, and they can stop paying whenever they.
Falls into your reoccurring revenue model.
It does.
So what kind of impact is it on your model with all this? I mean, compared to the service contracts, where does that sit in terms of?
We're
just starting.
Just starting.
Just
starting that
software as a service model.
That's a new thing.
It is.
Okay, cool. Good question. Yeah, in the back on the left here? Yep.
Out of all your customers and your sales force you have, how many people are able to get to the CFO, the CEO, instead of the building engineer, to have that discussion about the analytics and engineering, energy savings, and all the rest?
No one on my team.
Yeah, it is tough. It's definitely a different sell, a different level of sale. For us, it's a little bit easier because of CBRE's connection. But I would tell you, we're always pursuing opportunities on our own, and we have the same struggle. So with or without the CBRE lead in, it can be a battle. And the CFO still got to justify it. Because at the end of the day, they're still looking at a bunch of stuff they haven't fixed. So now let's look at another application that's not going to, I hate saying it this way, but at the end of the day, analytics, if you do nothing, is no value, right? So I can tell you that you need to fix this, and it'll save you this much in energy, but if you don't spend a dime, well, then you just got a really fancy alarming system. So.
When I add something real quick, if I could, to that, one of the other challenges that we found, at least in our markets, is given how hot the economy is right now, despite all the problems that we're running into in buildings, and the owners know about the deferred maintenance and the stuff that needs to be the 30-year-old system that needs to be upgraded, they don't have to. People are leasing stuff like crazy in Denver, for example, Seattle, everywhere. The economy is really, really strong. And so owners aren't interested in, at this point, and investing that kind of money in their infrastructure.
You're also starting to see more as-a-service models, much like this one Scott's talking about. But in addition to that, there are more people out there willing to finance projects. So for people who have sat on deferred maintenance and they're looking at a big CapEx or OpEx replacement plan, they'll go and find financing for that and be willing to pay the financing fee, it works well for us because it's an opportunity to actually perform that work and then put in the equipment that they need. It's still slow. I'm not going to tell you it's fully adopted, but I'm seeing it more and more in this space.
There was a question back here waiting, yeah.
Question really mostly for Brian, but the customers that get a CD where the analytics isn't something that they want, they're asking for, but you see the values in them, what are the ones that you are able to sell or convert, what are the main points that you
A lot of it's information driven. So the beauty of analytics is that we can, I'll give you a prime example. For a retail client, we do 1,100 sites. And within that analytics application, we've embedded the asset information. So I can tell that client across their portfolio which manufacturer, Carrier, York, or Trane, had more faults in a specific geographical region, and then they can use that information. Let's call it an economizer failure. Let's say that Carrier, 25-ton, this model number, had twice as many economizer faults in Pensacola, Florida than the Trane units. That tells that client that they're going to probably not buy a Carrier unit. They're going to look at Trane or York, who had more reliability. It helps drive asset degradation. So if I'm looking at an asset that's typically supposed to be replaced in 15 years, I might get 20 to 25 out of it because now I'm maintaining it better. The analytics are telling me when to service it, but I'm also providing a continuous commissioning program because it's embedded in the application. So that's typically the selling points for that. Energy is still a hot button thing, but energy's tough. You know, even if you do a retrofit, in my world, if I say to a client, you have a BAS, great, I'll put a new BAS in. How much is it going to save me? Zero. A sensor for a sensor doesn't save you anything. So now you got to get to, I can put an IP controller in, I can drive to the experiential aspects of the world today, which is now I can embed your lighting with your room shades, with the room scheduler, with the concierge service, with the food service. Now I got a whole package. That's how you have to sell these solutions today, because energy is not going to do it.
Have either one of your organizations considered using performance as a contract now to sell those services, especially you guys are doing that with what you're doing?
So, no. And we've considered it. We've stubbed our toe enough in the performance contracting realm that we're going to avoid it for a while. But I did want to address the question that you had, the gentleman in the back, about analytics. So in our one of the things we've begun doing with some of our higher value clients is we have begun converting a high level, high frequency traditional service agreement for their control system and converting that for our financial reasons with an analytics overlay. So we can have our technicians, again, our most scarce resource, spend less time on site doing the things that need to be done rather than checking 300 VAVs once a quarter, one by one. And so with the same amount of resources, that we have an incentive to deploy analytics as easily and as quickly as we can, because with that same resource pool, I can now gather more contracts.
CBRE looks at it in a similar way.
Question right here?
So I mean, a lot of older buildings already have existing alarm systems in place, and are already paying, the alarm service. I mean, couldn't you theoretically, with the well-placed product, replace their alarm service, add the analytics on top of it, they say then, hey, we'll do everything your alarm guy is doing, plus analytics, and we'll do it for about the same dollar.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we don't come across that very often, but you absolutely could. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. And honestly, what you will see out on the floor is technology that enables that every day. The peel and stick sensors, the wireless devices, you name it, it's out there to provide that same service. And that's bridging the gap right now. kind of messy thing about that is all of that technology is great. You question how long it's going to be around, but the other thing is you're only putting a Band-Aid on something that really needs to be replaced. I can slap a peel and stick sensor on it. I can extract the point, run it in analytics, and I can tell you the same thing. You need to replace that piece of equipment. So at that point, you're just throwing technology at a bad problem. That's the challenge. So it's part of an educational process. Scott does that well with his organization. Greg's out there, trying to educate the consulting firms. It's people like that who need to remind some of those buyers and those engineers that you can't just throw technology at everything. There are some things you just need to replace.
We got a break here. I'm going to bring up another quick topic, which is we've been talking a lot about, is the IP controllers. It's how all the BAS manufacturers have moved over to IP platforms. We're now, as you guys mentioned, pushing OT networks to the owners. To both of you, how are the IP controllers changing your business, and what do you guys see in the future for that? And then could you speak to the concept of the OT network as well? And we're running out of time.
I'll keep that brief then. I think IP technology is fantastic. I think we're seeing it more and more. Do I think it's fully evolved and matured? No, I don't. And I think it's only going to happen, it's only going to get better over the next couple of years. But the stuff that's out there is not bad. It offers a lot more flexibility from an integration standpoint. You can process more data. But you're also seeing with that, you're seeing a lot more clients saying, I want a GPON network. I didn't even know what one was 2 weeks ago until we saw it on an RFP.
None of us do. I have
no
idea what that is.
GPON is a split fibered network. So now clients are demanding they run fiber out to all of their ancillary devices. So when we're just getting our hands on IP controllers running Cat 6, now we're talking about running fiber and all the components that are required for fiber. So it's changing rapidly.
Yeah. We are not installing any MSTP controllers on any greenfield projects. How's that?
Well, I guess that answered that. So.
I mean, we're not, even regardless of the specification.
Right.
You know,
I guess the question
we
back to
demand enough respect. Why?
Thank you. We are finding we can get off the jobs more quickly. The controllers, the configurations. Another reason is the installing contractors. We can use a structured cabling, typically less expensive contractor to install, PoE type terminal devices. And we leave the specialty, more traditional subcontractors for the central plants and the more complex work.
And the gold thing is, what type of installation savings are you seeing on an IP job using that?
20 to 30%.
You get the advantage of using a low voltage cable guy. I mean, the same guy who's running the network stuff in the building's running your VAV wire now.
So I mean, Scott, like these greenfield projects, you guys are in the designs and all that. You see it also. Tell us about the budgets. Like, they put the TC budget with an MS, with the 485 type network. When you guys come in with this IP network, where does it land? Does it end up being more expensive than what the MST budget was, or is it actually less expensive, or can you speak to that?
The price is the same, and I'd say the cost has shifted, right? We're buying IT equipment now, we're buying some switches, we're getting fiber installed, we're spending more time doing the integration and managing the network and that kind of thing. So we're shifting from hardware to labor, technical labor. Again, to programmers and IT level folks.
Job goes out to bid. You guys are like, if there's MSTP numbers coming in, you're not like, oh, we got to put in an MSTP. No, you're like, no, we feel confident this will hold up against the MSTP number.
100%.
And be competitive every time.
Yes.
Cool. And that, for us, like myself as a distributors who work with different contractors and end users and consultants, that's the number one thing I hear is it's going to be too expensive, Scott. I can't go IP. It's going to be too expensive. Okay, guys. This is Scott Cochrane. He does a lot. It's not more expensive, okay? It's just, we just have, as an industry, we're not like Scott. We have not, as an industry, we're not doing it at scale yet to understand the advantages. And those who are going to have a huge advantage on those who aren't in just a couple years, so.
And you've been on these on both large and small integration projects, despite how large the integration is, how small it is, you guys are still into it.
Correct. I mean, the other advantage is, in many instances, we're buying less hardware. Much to my Tritium reps' chagrin, we're buying fewer and fewer JACEs. It's a flat architecture right up to a supervisor. Here's the question in the back.
Yeah.
Well, one comment, I just want to reiterate that some of the same experience that you guys got is the cost increase, the cost added for an IT controller is negligible to the cost savings.
Correct.
We just finished a hospital that was MSTP. We're using automated commissioning, so already trying to improve our commissioning time. Troubleshooting terminations on MSTP kills you on a job. We're starting up an IT tower right now, and the startup time is ridiculous to us. You're not even worrying about those issues, and we're flying through that commissioning.
And that's been our experience as well. I mean, we did a 20-story tower in Denver, and once we got through, again, it's a pretty steep learning curve, not only for us, but also the manufacturer of the product that we installed, about the proper network configuration and segments and all that stuff. It went lightning fast.
Okay, so with all that being said now, and the IP controls, and we talked about a lot of things. So I'm going to go back to the original comment. 10 years from now, what's the scope of work for a temperature control contractor based on what you guys are doing and what you're seeing? I mean,
I think it's going to constantly keep changing. As the product change, their scope's going to change. My world, I'll likely still see some type of temperature controls contractor. I think you're going to see more wireless, though, than we have in the last couple of years. So I think their work is going to change a little bit as well. So it's tough to say. It's still going to be network heavy, though. I think you're going to see a lot more infrastructure requirements of the temperature controls contractor.
And you guys would agree that the temperature control contractor of the future is going to be more like that guy right there, like the Superman cyborg. And a lot of your young people are like this today, where they're not just electrical mechanical engineers, but they're also IT competent. They're also so it's not like you got IT people and you got mechanical electrical engineers. What our future is these new people coming in, they're going to be both. They're going to be like that guy over there. They're going to be like Superman to us, because they're going to be able to take two people's jobs. So, that's what I'm seeing. You guys kind of agree with that? You guys are probably seeing it with your staff now, the young people that are coming in.
Yeah.
100%.
Especially for us, because we're hiring more software-centric folks.
Okay, everybody. So that's going to wrap it up for this session. I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you very much for your participation.